Hello, New York Met fans. Well, the day we all anticipated has come and gone. Yes, opening day. But was it really opening day? That remains to be seen because to me, opening day should have been last Thursday in the nation's capital against the Nationals. Now the Mets are going to be punished by playing 3 games down the road. I'm not sure if they're going to be 7 inning doubleheaders or separate single games, but it's kind of sucks that the Mets did nothing wrong, but they're going to be punished for what happened with the COVID situation with the Nationals. I would think that in 2021, baseball would just go ahead and play the games and just use whatever players are on the other team's roster that's affected by COVID. But what are you going to do? So, yes, technically, opening day was in the city of brotherly love. Not the place most Met fans like to be to have opening day. But it did happen. It was in Philly, and we're going to have to live with it, aren't we, Met fans? And usually opening day we own. Yes, we do. But I think because I'm going to blame it on we should have had it Thursday, and that's the reason why we didn't win yesterday. That's it. That's the ticket. Yeah, it was another heartbreaker for Jacob deGrom as the Mets dropped the season opener 5-3 to the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, you can't blame Jacob deGrom because he was on fire. He was dominating. But it all boiled down to Louis Gourmet allowing the go-ahead runs to score on a throwing error. And that basically capped off the 8th inning for the Phillies when they scored 5 runs to take a 5-3 lead against the Mets on Monday night after the greatest pitcher on the planet shut him down for 6 innings. The good thing was Francisco, no, do not call me Frankie, Francisco Lindor made his debut as a Met, and he is signed, sealed, delivered now. Yes, he is signed, sealed, delivered. He'll be with the Mets for the next 11 years if you count this year as one of those years. And he came out with a 1-for-4 performance with a single and a walk in his debut, and it was just good to see him in the lineup. Now, like I said, it kind of sucks that the Mets were behind the 8 ball coming into this series because of what happened with the Nationals. So they might have been a little bit rusty running into the buzzsaw that was the Phillies. Now, I know each individual game is different, but sometimes when a team like the Phillies is as hot as they are after what they did this past weekend, usually rolls over into the next series, at least for a game or two. So it was a tough situation for the Mets to be in, but they hung tough, even when they fell behind 5-3. Pete Alonso hit a line drive to the right field wall with runners on first and third to end it, and he earned his first save, did Mr. Alvarado. So the Mets were hanging tough. I'll get more into that game in a minute. I just want to, because when I was doing research on Jacob deGrom's performance yesterday, I couldn't help but be mesmerized by some of the numbers I was coming up with. And he is, since 2018, he's 36-41 with a 2.07 ERA. How is that possible in an era when the ball is just flying all over the place to have a 2.07 ERA and be 36-41? But that's Jacob deGrom and the situation he's been with the Mets. Now, he's made 184 starts in his career, and he's allowed 0 runs in 40 of those starts. And that's amazing. Now, what kind of annoyed me yesterday was the fact that he had a 100-pitch count, and Rojas said that, he'll abide by that count. But when he took him out, he had only thrown 77 pitches. Now, deGrom himself said he had no argument over being taken out. He kind of agreed with Rojas, but I think at that point you got to give him another inning. The 8th inning is debatable, and that's when the Mets collapse, but you never know. Ifs, ands, and buts, we'll never know because we can't relive the past. But I would have let Jake throw 100 pitches. You got to get the arm tuned up sooner or later. And but again, it was the bullpen. It was Dustin May that blew it. And it just wasn't easy from that point on. But getting back to deGrom, he threw 24 straight fastballs to start the game, which is amazing. And the fastest one he threw was 102 miles per hour. This guy is getting better and better with age. And the 25th pitch he threw was a slider that was clocked at 92.4 miles an hour. And there wasn't even a chance of that ball being hit. So when you're getting thrown 100-mile-an-hour heat and all for 24 straight pitches, you see a 92 one, it's going to blow your mind. But it's all for naught. We can only appreciate the performance, right, Mets fans? And for the first half of the season, I should say, the single, deGrom had the first Met hit of the year, and he also had 2 hits in the game and an RBI, and he pitched shutout ball for at least 6 innings. Well, guess what, baseball fans? That's only happened 6 times in the entire history of Major League, 8 times in the history of Major League Baseball. That's incredible. And deGrom just kept padding his opening day stats. He has now pitched 17 innings, given up only 9 hits, 0 runs, 4 walks, and 25 Ks on opening day. That is amazing. That really is amazing. And yesterday was kind of historic because the 25 fastest pitches he's thrown in his career, 7 of those pitches came last night. So deGrom is defying logic by throwing harder as he's getting older. And one of those pitches reached 102 miles per hour. Now, here's a little trivia for you. Over the last 50 seasons, only 4 pitchers over a 3-year period have had an ERA of 2.10 or lower combined for the 3-year period. And they are. And well, deGrom is now the 4th. But I'm going to give you the 3, and you tell me if deGrom belongs in this category. I think he does. They are Clayton Kershaw, Pedro Martinez, and Greg Maddux. Can you think of a threesome better than that? Well, add deGrom to that threesome because he's reached that level. Now, the amazing thing about deGrom is in his victories over the last 3 years, he's had a 1.11 ERA. Yes, read my lips, 1.11 ERA. Now, in the games he didn't win, where he went 0-19, you know what his ERA was? 2.58. That just blows my mind. You have a 2.58 ERA in the 19 games that you lost as a New York Met over the last 3 years. Unbelievable. And last night, one of the reasons why he didn't win was Trevor May. But May had 1 walk and loaded the bases with 2 outs. And then all hell broke loose. But what are you going to do? Now, the good thing is the Mets are talking about extending deGrom's contract, and I think that should be done ASAP. If you're going to give Lindor the big bucks who never wore the blue and orange, you got to reward deGrom. Make him a Met for life. Make him higher paid than Lindor. Make him the face of the franchise. Lindor can earn his stripes, but deGrom deserves it right now. And it's time to get Michael Conforto back on the beam and sign him. He's a career Met. I always love the Mets who come up through the organization, and you just can't let a guy like Conforto go. He's the player rep. The players look up to him. He's a good hitter. My only question with Conforto is he's batted .259 for a career, and I think he needs to get that batting average up. But you look at all the other numbers. He's there with the best of them. And I think it's not the fact that he's a .259 hitter. I just think he needs to just work on hitting for a higher average. I think potentially he's a 280 to 310 hitter. He has that sweetest swing, and when you have a swing like that, you really do need to get it together and hit for a higher average. Now, the good thing I liked about Conforto last year was he wasn't pulling the ball all the time. He was hitting it the opposite way to left field, and if you noticed last night, they weren't playing the shift on him all night. So that's a good thing, and I like that part of it. And here's another deGrom statistic. That was the 53rd game in his career since 2014 where he pitched 6 innings, gave up 2 runs or less, and did not get a win. In that time period, that is by far and away the most in Major League Baseball. But I think this year, I think deGrom will come back and win more games than he loses, and will actually have a nice win-loss total. The law of average just says it has to. Now, like I said, we got Lindor. He made his debut. And the game ended with Pete Alonso hitting a shot. So we were in the ball game the whole time. So it wasn't like it was a bad thing that happened. It's just a little snafu with the bullpen yesterday cost us the game. And we can't have that happen too often. Now, Rojas, when they were talking about not leaving in the ball game, Rojas said before the game, he's saying he'd had a 100-pitch limit. He said he hadn't thrown in 10 days, and conversation with him between innings led us to pull him. So I'm not sure what deGrom said. I don't have privy to that information. But deGrom didn't push back when he was asked about it because he knew going in that he would be limited due to the long layoff. So deGrom basically came out with a statement that said, long season, talking to them, it felt like the right decision. So we were all emotional about that, but I think, this was a mutual decision with Rojas and deGrom, or that's what I'm reading here. I'm not going to read any more into it. And then they brought in Miguel Castro in the 7th inning, and he held the fort. But then in the 8th, Brad Miller singled, Andrew McCutchen, who's getting revived in Philadelphia, walked, then Reese Hoskins singled to load the bases. Now, this is another move happened after they took Trevor May out. They brought in Aaron Loop, and I see if it was one and done with Harper, I could see that. But after that, Realmuto and Alec Bohm were coming up, so I kind of questioned that. And to make matters worse, he hit Harper with a curveball to force in a run. And then JT Realmuto grounded a single to the left to tie it at 2. And then Alec Bohm, this was the one that really broke the back, hit a 2-hopper to Guillorme, who entered as defensive replacement, but his throw home sailed high and off the mid of James McCann, 2 runs scored, giving the Phillies a 4-2 lead. And then Didi Gregorius hit a sacrifice fly to make it 5-2. So it doesn't help that we lost to a division foe and a red-hot division foe, because the Phillies now 4-0. We're actually what, 2.5 games, I guess, behind Philly already, and we only played 1 game. How does that happen? But they did shut out the Braves. They did us a favor there. The Braves are going to be mixed at the end of the year. So it's a long season. We'll see what happens. Connor Brogdon got his 2nd win in the year as he worked the 8th, and Alvarado got the save in the 9th, and I think he basically saved himself because he worked out of his own trouble. And Matt Moore came back to Major League Baseball, coming from Japan where he pitched last year, and he yielded 2 runs and 4 hits in his first Major League start since 2019. Now, Lindor, his much hyped debut, he struck out looking on 3 pitches in his first at-bat. He walked to load the bases in the 3rd, grounded out to the pitcher in the 5th, lined out to 3rd in the 7th, and then a 2-out single to right in the 9th to keep the game alive. Now, all eyes are going to be on Lindor. He's the big man, the big money, and big money is where everyone has their eyeballs, and he's going to be making $341 million with his 10-year contract extension that begins next year. So he is the future of the Met infield, and I'm hoping everything works. I don't see there'll be a problem. But another key offseason acquisition the Mets got was James McCann, and he got an RBI single, and then deGrom dunked one into left that made it 2-0 Chase Moore. Brandon Ketzler came in, and at the moment, this is always key. You don't realize the time, but he escaped further trouble by getting Kevin Pillar to ground to a glove play. Now, I'm not sure why Pillar was in the leadoff spot. I get it. He's a great defensive player, and a lefty was on the mound, but I think you just got to have the confidence. You can't be batting Brendan Nimmo 8th. He has such a great on-base percentage, and you got to let him hit. And the other thing is, I'm not even sure if it was right to actually start Pillar. Dom Smith is pretty good against lefties too, and if he's going to be your left fielder, you need that back because the 3rd, 4th time around, it's not always a lefty that's on the mound. But Joe Girardi did say what he can't say enough about what Kinsler did, and his bullpen was great. Now, Steve Cohen actually had a State of the Mets address before the game, and he came out and said, I'm not going to predict the World Series out of the gate, but what I do think is we're going to be really competitive. So I do believe we're going to make the playoffs, and then once you get into the playoffs, anything can happen, right? And that's the way to go, because I don't think a World Series championship is a lock all the time, so you don't go around and saying it. If any team's a lock, if there is such a thing, it would be the Dodgers this year. But you never go out saying you're going to win the World Series. You make the playoffs, and anything can happen, and you take it from there. And that's what the Mets need to do, is shoot for the playoffs. And they'll be shooting again today. We're trying to win game number 2 of the season. It's good to see Marcus Stroman back. Remember, he was out last year with COVID-19 concerns, and he'll be on the mound, and he's going to be our number 2 guy. He may be our number 2 guy when even Syndergaard returns. So let's see what he's got. If he can give us a good 5 or 6 innings, and he'll be going against Chase Anderson, making his first start for the Phillies. And last year, Anderson was 1-2 with 7.22 ERA for Toronto. So we'll be back tomorrow with the Met recap. Sorry it wasn't a good one this time for our first one of the year, but things will get better. So remember, let's go Mets and play ball. And thanks for tuning in to this YouTube cast.